give me a pregnant and I need help. I don't.
Do you want them to hurt me? Why? So I don't ever see you again. AJ, remember, yes? When you tell the truth, you don't have to pause to answer.
This is AJ Freund. No, this was AJ Freund. This 5-year-old boy never had a chance at a normal, happy life. He never had a chance at life at all. He was still in kindergarten when his mother took his life for the most outrageous reason. When the detectives started looking into the family history, they discovered a series of dark truths and one of the biggest fails in social service history. What led to AJ's chilling death? Were there signs and chances to stop the tragedy? And how did his parents pay for it? This is the full story of AJ Freund and JoAnn Cunningham. On April 18, 2019, two frantic parents called the emergency services in Illinois. Their 5-year-old son was gone.
You're a missing child.
60-year-old Drew Freund told the dispatcher that neither he nor his 36-year-old wife, JoAnn, knew of AJ's whereabouts. They begged law enforcement to hurry and help them find him. Within an hour, officers were at their doorsteps. But when they stepped into their home, a nastier story began to emerge. The first thing the officers noticed was the absolute squalor the couple lived in. You could hardly walk through the rooms without stepping in moldy food or dirty clothing. There was dog waste smeared on the floor and blankets. Every carpet was stained and burned, and tiles were missing from the kitchen and bathroom floors. The walls were cracked and peeling, and most rooms had objects just stacked on top of one another. Through the mess, though, the officers could find several syringes, and poor AJ's bedroom looked more like a forgotten deposit. There was a cockroach waste on AJ's pillow. When the officers asked Drew when he last saw his son, he said he'd put him to bed the night prior, around 9:30 p.m. But Drew also spoke much more than officers asked him to. And you know how it goes in these cases. When someone over-explains themselves, it's usually a bad sign. Drew said he had searched the house for an hour and couldn't find his son, so he went to AJ's school and searched the premises there too. Still, Drew couldn't answer a simple question. One of the officers asked him if he had a recent picture of his son. Drew pulled out his phone and began scrolling. He scrolled and scrolled and scrolled and then said, "No, I can't find any." What parent doesn't have pictures of their 5-year-old child on their phone? Drew couldn't even tell the officers what color eyes AJ had. He said blue and then maybe brown. Another officer went to speak with JoAnn, but she was on the phone with her boyfriend. The officer overheard the boyfriend Daniel asking JoAnn if she had found AJ yet. This was strange. The phone call had started after the officers had arrived at their home, and JoAnn didn't mention to Daniel that her son was missing. This meant that he already knew of the situation beforehand, before 911 was called. The officers searched the house, the neighborhood, the nearby woods, and all the playgrounds in the area. They even called in a specialized team to search the lake via boats and divers. Law enforcement also rallied the community. Dozens of volunteers came together asking door to door about AJ's whereabouts and looking for clues in all wooded areas. Helicopters scoured Crystal Lake and its surroundings. Law enforcement wasn't ruling out any possibility. Perhaps someone had snatched AJ, or he'd run away from home and got lost or hurt. Yes, 5-year-olds can run away from home if the situation at home is bad enough. And as the officers had already seen, AJ had neglectful parents, at the very least. Apart from cockroach droppings on AJ's bed, the officers had found a lock on the outside of his bedroom door. His bedroom window was screwed shut. Was he being kept prisoner? Drew claimed this was for his son's best, as he had tried to escape the house through the window. I don't know about you, but that gives me shivers. If little AJ tried to leave his house by jumping out the window, he must have been desperate to escape. Few 5-year-olds try to get out the window of their own bedroom. Law enforcement cannies confirmed that AJ had not left his home this time, at least not on his own 2 feet. And a few days later, AJ was found.
Police discovered the body of 5-year-old AJ Freund, who disappeared last week. Search parties had been scouring Illinois farmland when they uncovered the child's remains.
AJ's body was sent to the coroner's office. The report concluded that he had passed away 3 days before his parents even phoned 911. He died on April 15, 2019, at 5.5 years old.
Heartbroken neighbors come together to honor the life of little AJ.
AJ was born on October 14th, 2013. Like any toddler, he was loving, outgoing, and very attached to his mother. He had a younger brother, and they liked playing outside, drawing, and wrestling together. As he grew up, he became more hardworking and organized. He loved putting together collages of his drawings or paintings, and he always asked his parents to help take pictures of his creations. But AJ's life was never easy. When he was born, he tested positive for opiates and benzodiazepines. As you probably know, this can only happen if a baby's mom has been using while pregnant. When this happened, AJ was removed from his parents' custody. JoAnn Cunningham and Drew Freund had met in 2012 at McHenry County Courthouse. JoAnn was there getting a divorce while Drew, or Andrew, was an attorney working there. He saw JoAnn crying on a hallway bench one day and decided to comfort her. A carer dynamic was soon established. Drew was a 50-something-year-old, successful attorney. JoAnn was 29, without a job or a lawyer, and addicted to somewhere up to 15 meds. Drew immediately took over JoAnn's case, and from there, things got romantic. But Drew wasn't just a father figure to JoAnn. He sympathized with her problem. You see, he had had a serious narcotics and alcohol addiction himself. He had almost lost his career as a lawyer because of it. JoAnn and Drew didn't have a happy relationship. For the 7 years that they were together, they fought, substances, and each other. Nevertheless, in 2013, just a year after they met, the couple had their first child, Andrew Jr., or AJ. The following year, they had another son, Parker. In a heartbreaking way, he stood as a replacement for AJ. Remember, he was taken away from his parents and put into foster care as soon as he was born. But in 2014, both his parents began rehab, counseling, and parenting classes. So in June of 2015, a judge concluded they were fit to get custody of AJ again. They had both visited AJ regularly and tried to maintain a relationship with him. So when he arrived home, he knew who his parents were. But again, this was not a happy family. Around New Year's 2019, JoAnn and Drew finally split up after years of escalating fights. But neither of them left the family home in Crystal Lake, Illinois. In April 2019, JoAnn was already dating someone else, and she had invited him to live with her indefinitely. That was with her ex-boyfriend, and her 2 boys. She was also pregnant with her boyfriend's child, so they had been dating before she and Drew broke up. Also, her boyfriend was in prison. I know, it just keeps getting worse. This is the story detectives uncovered as they looked into the Freund Cunningham family history. There was also something else they uncovered via the Department of Child and Family Services. There were countless phone calls and incidents with DCFS, several reports of unspeakable abuse, and yet all cases were deemed to be unfounded and abandoned. When they arrested Drew, officers looked through his phone. There, they found that he had Googled child CPR. There was also a photo of a shopping list, and some of the items were disturbing to say the least. Duct tape, plastic gloves, trash bags, bleach, air freshener. Honestly, this list sounds like it was taken straight out of horror movies. Both Drew and JoAnn were asked about the shopping list. They said the tape was going to be used for hanging pictures and the bleach was for cleaning the house. They used a bottle a week, they said. First of all, who hangs pictures with tape? And second of all, that house didn't look like it had seen any cleaning supplies for years. Their story just didn't make any sense. When Drew was asked about his child CPR search, he said, "Oh, that was probably JoAnn." He claimed that his ex was probably looking into that just to be prepared in case something happened to her new unborn baby. Yeah, right. Drew also said that JoAnn believed AJ had oppositional defiance disorder, or ODD. In other words, AJ saw himself as the leader of the family home and was super defiant towards his parents. parents. So JoAnn was adamant that she was not at fault for her son trying to escape their house of horrors. She said it was all because of a mental disorder. She shunned responsibility. However, as detectives put pressure on him, Drew started talking. He began with tales of extreme punishment for the smallest mistakes. JoAnn would punish her son for even stacking the clean dishes in an incorrect way. On April 15th, AJ lied to his mother about soiling his underwear. Of course he lied. He wasn't allowed to make mistakes at home. He knew what was coming if he admitted. However, his evil mother knew he was lying, so she punished him for that too, putting him in cold water until he confessed to hiding the underwear. He was in there for 20 minutes. After this horror moment, JoAnn put her son to bed. A few hours later, she checked on him and noticed he wasn't breathing. On April 24th, both Drew and JoAnn confessed to JoAnn being behind their son's death and that Drew helped her bury him. In the early hours of April 16th, JoAnn told Drew that their son had passed away. Drew simply said, "I'll take care of it." So he took AJ's body down to the basement and put it inside a plastic tote. The next day, he moved the body into the trash bags that he'd just bought. Then, he put the trash bags in the trunk of his car and drove him to a Woodstock forest about 7 miles away from the family home. There, he dug a shallow grave and buried him. It was heart-wrenching to hear AJ's autopsy report in the courthouse. When law enforcement found him, he was covered in marks and injuries to the head. There were also small circular abrasions on his forehead. They matched the shower head. Also in court, all the DCFS calls and investigations were revealed. It was shocking. A 2019 review by the paper found evidence of 10 hotline calls since 2012 regarding her care of children, including her firstborn son and a foster son she raised for a short time, from police, hospital staff, neighbors, and even her own mother. 4 of the 10 calls were before AJ was born. Indeed, JoAnn Cunningham also had a son from her first marriage. Almost 15 years older than AJ, Child Protection Services had been in and out of her life ever since she'd had kids. She was simply unfit to be a mother, and yet she insisted on getting custody of AJ. In March 2018, an investigation was launched after serious allegations at the family home. A hospital social worker had called the DCFS hotline after noticing several marks on AJ's face. He was 4 years old at that point. When officers visited the home, they found JoAnn passed out in her car after a narcotics relapse. It took law enforcement over a month to speak to AJ's parents about the case. They were either passed out, not present, or not willing to talk. The investigators found the boys clean and concluded there were no signs of maltreatment. In May of that year, a final safety check was made to the home and they closed the case. In September of the same year, someone else called for a well-being check on the house. They noticed there was no power at the house for weeks, and they knew there were small children living there. When the officers arrived, JoAnn did not let them in. She was inside the house with no power, but she didn't want any help. Law enforcement officers saw AJ and his brother through the windows, and they described them as looking healthy. Although officers reported this to DCFS, the services decided not to pursue an investigation. Power cuts did not warrant a whole investigation, they thought. In December 2018, JoAnn phoned DCFS. She complained that her boyfriend Daniel stole her cell phone and some prescription meds used to treat opioid addiction. When the officers arrived at the house, they noticed the horrific state of the house. Indeed, AJ's disappearance case was not the first time officers saw what was going on, and yet the boys were allowed to live with their parents. At that time, the officers also noticed a large mark on AJ's hip. When they asked the family about it, JoAnn said it was their 60-pound dog that did it when he jumped on AJ. However, the officers urged the family to take AJ to a doctor. When he was there, AJ told the doctor, "Maybe someone hit me with a belt. Maybe mommy didn't mean to hurt me." You guys, this is so heartbreaking. AJ tried to protect his mom, and a few months later, he would be dead. It's also shocking how he was allowed to stay with his parents even after this comment. Even though his doctor reported the comment to DCFS, the services concluded that if Drew was there, AJ was safe enough. Honestly, how many red flags have to pop up for DCFS to do something? Before New Year's 2019, DCFS made a surprise visit to the Freund house. They concluded decided the house was in better condition than on their previous visit. On January 4th, the services closed their case. There were a lot of people who testified against the family. Friends and neighbors saw years of neglectful and awful fights. They knew JoAnn and Drew as two people really unfit to bring a new life into this world. One neighbor remembered Halloween night in 2017 when the Drew/Cunningham family arrived at her door for treats. AJ had a lot of medical tape wrapped around his head, torso, and arms. He also had clumps of hair missing and Vaseline smeared on his face. The neighbor kindly asked if he was dressed as a mummy. JoAnn told her no, AJ had just accidentally spilled a pot of boiling water on himself. Sheesh. A few months later, the same neighbor remembered walking her dog past AJ's house. That's when she saw him and Parker outside in a running car. She approached the boys and asked them what they were doing there. They replied that they were preparing to go to a motel before mommy and daddy killed each other. These were the words of two toddlers. The neighbor said she could hear the couple fight very clearly from outside. They were screaming loud enough for all their neighbors to hear. Imagine how distressing this was for the poor boys. But when she saw her snooping around, JoAnn came outside to threaten her neighbor. She yelled at her, "You better not call the police on us." On another night, the neighbor walked by the house again, only to hear a child's voice saying, "I'm cold, I'm cold." Several other people testified that they believed the boys were being severely mistreated by their parents. There were signs, marks, and the boys seemed afraid of their family 24/7. So it was true. AJ was trying to escape his house when he was just 3 or 4. In a deleted video recorded by detectives, AJ tells his mom that he wants bad people to do things to her so that she'll leave him alone.
Bad people, like really bad people.
She was subjecting him to unspeakable things after he'd wet the bed. In the same video, AJ tells his mom that he doesn't want to have a family anymore.
I just don't want a family.
JoAnn tells his son, "You don't have one. Do you really think that your dad would choose you and Parker over me?" The agony AJ endured throughout his entire short life is impossible to imagine.
Really? Why are you trying to hurt me with that? AJ, remember,
Yes,
when you tell the truth, you don't have to pause to answer. You think I'm gonna get in trouble with you? Are you my boss? Are you my parent?
no.
Why would I get in trouble with you?
JoAnn berated her son for over 10 minutes, mocking him for saying she would get into trouble. That's after she'd done horrible things to him for wetting the bed. And by the way, children often wet the bed at older ages after instances of maltreatment and extreme stress. It was all on her, and yet she refused to accept this.
You think I'm dumb or I don't even know the answers? Yeah.
Heartbreakingly, AJ then says the devil will eventually get his mom in trouble.
The devil.
The devil? So the devil's gonna get me in trouble?
The video ended with JoAnn threatening him and Parker. She made it clear she was in danger. She was the only one who could really get them in trouble, not the other way around. What sort of monster plays power dynamics with their kindergarten kids? When AJ tried to say his dad would help, JoAnn got even more callous.
Because you think he falls for your and because me and Parker don't? Then what? Say it.
Those bad people hurt you.
Why?
Drew testified to years of unspeakable physical punishments JoAnn carried out. He claimed that he had tried several times to talk his wife down. Oftentimes, he had to physically intervene between JoAnn and AJ to stop whatever she was doing. The jury shed tears as they listened to the stomach-turning recordings and dozens of instances where AJ could have been saved from that house of horrors.
But why do you want them to hurt me? Why?
So I don't ever see you again.
At the end of her 2020 trial, JoAnn Cunningham was allowed to speak.
I love him. I miss him. There's nothing I wouldn't do to bring him back. My heart and my mind mind are consumed with despair, pain, sadness, grief, unceasing anguish, and extreme remorse.
JoAnn pleaded guilty to taking the life of her son. Judge Robert Wilbrandt told her, "Your actions were inhumane, repulsive, and frankly, shocking. You lied, cheated, and manipulated your way through life while terrorizing your small son. It was a horrible death preceded by a horrible life. Miss Cunningham was responsible for that life, and now she must be responsible for his death." And yet, during her statement, she said she loved being a mother more than anything else, and that being a mother defined her. On July 17th, 2020, JoAnn was sentenced to 35 years in prison. There is no chance for an earlier parole date. Then there was the issue of Drew Freund. While he was not directly responsible for his son's death, he covered for his ex and even buried the body. For days, he pled with law enforcement and volunteers to help him find AJ.
What is your message to those people who think you're withholding information?
I have no control over what people think. I just want my son to come home, okay?
Yuck. Initially, Drew pleaded not guilty to murder.
AJ's father has pled not guilty and is awaiting trial.
But on September 18th, 2020, he changed his plea to guilty to aggravated battery of a child, voluntary manslaughter, and concealment of a homicidal death. He was sentenced to 30 years in prison. As a part of his plea deal, he must also cooperate in an investigation against DCFS. JoAnn gave birth in prison to a girl named Gracie Faith. Her ex-boyfriend Daniel petitioned to get custody of the girl. Shortly after, he died of an overdose. Poor Gracie ended up in foster care, along with Parker. 5,000 people attended AJ's funeral in Crystal Lake. Law enforcement officers carried his coffin, and everyone wore the color blue in honor of AJ's favorite color. The DCFS worker who repeatedly mishandled AJ's case was also charged. This is very rare. Carlos Acosta, Andrew Polavin, Acosta's supervisor, were charged in September 2020 with 2 counts of endangering the life of a child, causing death, and 1 count of reckless conduct, causing great bodily harm. The 2 men knowingly permitted AJ to live in an unsafe environment after he had made those heartbreaking comments to the doctor in late 2018. And yet, both pled not guilty and requested separate trials. They were released on bond, and their cases are still ongoing as of 2023. The family home was demolished. Everyone wants to forget JoAnn and Drew. But JoAnn is not done with this story. In fact, she's currently trying to appeal her sentence, painting herself as a victim of prolonged mental health issues and, quote, a hard life.
I feel like this is getting worse in here for me the more I talk to you.
Yeah. Keep talking about how hard it is to be you. When the CBS reporter blatantly asked her if she took AJ's life, she said,
AJ had ODD.
Yep, even after all these years, she blames his mental health for it. Even after thousands of people heard those stomach-turning recordings in court.
Police say on your phone there was a video of AJ lying on a bare mattress in his bedroom, and you were berating him for urinating on his bed.
Well, I mean, wouldn't any parent?
Unbelievable.
How could you be upset with AJ when you knew you were shooting up when you were pregnant with him?
I don't know, it's like the devil.
Through 6 phone calls and several letters, JoAnn repeatedly felt sorry for herself.
Has everyone abandoned you?
Yes,
Why?
they listen to the news.
Yeah, that's why. The news is lying about what you did, right? They just don't understand your plight. Taking the life of your 5-year-old must have been difficult. JoAnn also said the situation around the time of AJ's death was tough for her. She had broken up with Drew, was pregnant with Daniel, and her boyfriend was just released from prison and moving in with them.
I'm pregnant with somebody else's child, and he was supposed to be coming back to live with us that morning. I begged them. I said, look at me, I'm pregnant, and I need help. I need help. No.
It's okay to make mistakes. Everyone does. But just because you got yourself knees deep in drama doesn't allow you to take it all out on an innocent child. AJ knew nothing but pain and fear for his entire, very short life. He never had a chance at happiness. Parker and Gracie will have a tough life too, much tougher than their unapologetic mother. AJ's demented mom caused unspeakable ripple effects that might last entire generations. It's distressing even to just read about this story, let alone experience it firsthand. And it's devastating to know how little JoAnn cares about this. No amount of prison time will help heal the damage she caused. Hey, thanks for watching. What are your thoughts on this case? Let me know in the comment section. Before you leave, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell button. See you next time.